to avoid premature attacks? See, this is a question that troubles many chess players because despite its answer to look simple, like just, for example, don't get started before you castle or before you connect your major works, it's a little bit more complex than that. And very often we know that we shouldn't do this kind of attack, but sometimes we're just forced to. So how do we really decide on what kind of attack to make and when is it a good way to get it started? This is a question that requires a more complex explanation, and that's why I've prepared to show you a game that was actually played between I think he's a Grandmaster Rayetsky and Jakobsen, two very strong players, and it very well illustrates exactly what we have to keep in mind in order to stay away from any premature attacks and at the same time get to take advantage if our opponent, after all, decides to start such a similar attack against us. So let us have a look and see what happened in this game. White started out with d4, so black continued knight f6, c4, and c5. That's what happened. After the last move of c5, white played knight f3. And this was the attempt for a Benoni type of setup, which sort of failed because white obviously didn't want to play the Benoni, so he decided to choose and play knight f3, which essentially leads to a more of a Sicilian type of a structure, kind of a formation. So it's a little bit different, therefore. Nevertheless, after the move of knight f3, exchange and the recaptures, then black actually continued with a6. So white went down with knight c3, e6, and g3. It looks like a very interesting setup for white, and the major idea, as you can easily notice yourself, is that white wants to play bishop g2. You like the castle, and possibly with e4 just get that pawn structure that is going to guarantee him a whole lot of a control and the real good activity on the side. So more pressure in the center, more possibilities, and eventually restricting black's pieces and his command. It's a good thing to do, you know, it's a really good idea for white as an opening. So that was a good start. After g3, black played queen to c7, and that was quite alright because after this move, white plays with bishop to g2 and he just goes on. This is a very nice continuation. Everything's under total control. e4 square is for white. He's actually going to play that pawn up to e4 at any of the next moves, and there's only one question. Should we really give away that pawn? This pawn in the c4 looks like a pawn that is going to hang there, and black's next move will be to take it. Does white give away this pawn just because he's hoping for some attack, or he actually has something more dangerous or tricky in case black accepts that sacrifice? What is going on up here? Now that's a very good question, and many players wouldn't be quite capable to respond this very well. So yet, I would like to do that. So, why do we give that away? And what's the whole point behind that variation? I think this question could be easily responded right now when you realize that if black's queen takes our pawn on c4, that violates the principle. It's an early attack. Yes, but okay, doesn't that just win a pawn? And actually, very shortly afterwards, black would get his queen back to c7, most probably get his bishop on the e7 and castle, which will lead him to a safe position and no threats. Yes, it looks like it, at least. And it doesn't. You see, that is the whole concept behind that. It looks like it's a good move, and it is not a good move. And the reason is because that violates a very basic principle. Don't start any attack that you're not sure about before you've completed your development. That's what black violates right now with this move. And the punishment doesn't really come late. This is very important. How do we recognize if a move like this is bad, like queen takes to c4? It looks like a free pawn. Well, if you believe that you haven't developed, your king is in the middle, the move that you're going to make is probably going to give the opponent open lines, like for example the C line, or probably will violate the principles and you feel it's not the right way to go. Sometimes we have this feeling for such moves. Don't do it. Just don't do it. If you notice that your opponent plays like that, what do? Develop and create threats. If you can't create threats, develop. Forcing or reinforcing moves. Combining these will help you to get the attack that you're really looking for. So that's what we want to do. And actually, after bishop to f4, well, I didn't find any forcing, any attacking moves, but for that, he actually found out some real strong developing ways. Bishop f4 was a good start. And obviously, when black just chose to bring his knight right up to c6, that was okay because with his next move, white simply played knight b3. So now we get to realize that it's not just about some development or whatever. It's about white making sure that he gets the right pieces and the right possibilities. So next move, I guess there will be a lot of continuations coming around. Maybe like rook c1. This is an interesting idea. There's going to be the white knight moving most probably, the black queen getting attacked. It's just nasty. What's really going to happen with black will be very, very dangerous and scary and everything. So he didn't like that. You move this queen away to b4, hoping that maybe it will be a little bit safer there. And that was just an illusion, because in reality, when the queen went to take the pawn, black started. He actually started that battle. He started this fight that cannot be changed. No? White castles on the short side, and the truth right now is that white's just completing his development shortly after which his attack is going to go, and black cannot do anything to oppose it. This was a huge moment. After castles, of course, seeing the black king in the middle of the board and the majority of black's pieces really unable to help, that's more than enough. So, okay, what happened is that black just did d5. He's obviously going up and getting the pawn to provide some extra space for his bishop and for his upcoming development. But it wasn't anything too great, really. After d5, white plays rook e1, bishop e7. And now, of course, there comes an interesting question. What do we do when the opponent violates the rules himself? What do we do? How do we plan against this so we take maximum advantage? See, there's just one thing we need to do in such positions. What I say is that you have to find a way or the possibility to open the position up, because if you can open up the position, then whatever he has, whatever development or control he has, that will be a position, the situation will be open, and then your pieces will suddenly come forward, create some amazing threats against the opponent, and that's it. This is exactly what white had in mind. So how do we open files? We push pawns. See, so essentially that's one little thing that you have to keep in mind. Actually, what you need to do is like open up the lines, and that will happen very quickly once the opponent has violated the principle of development. So after that continuation in e4, everything is going very quickly and straightforward. So there are a lot of bad things coming against black's king shortly after that. Let me show you. e4. Of course, if black exchanges, actually he takes the pawn, he doesn't exchange, but rather take the pawn. It's not too perfect because white's got this beautiful bishop c7 on the next move. And it's a pretty good move, really, because after bishop to c7, we see that there is this bishop that is coming on against black's territory. And it's actually coming on to a very, very dangerous square. What do I mean by that? Well, I simply mean that if black castles now, his queen is going to get trapped, which is quite extraordinary in my opinion. It's his queen has nowhere to go right there, and this is kind of funny as a matter of fact. It's kind of funny and at the same time pretty serious as well. I have to say that was a big move. And that's pretty much what happens, actually. So, did black have anything he could do? Well, yeah, he tried. Okay, well, after bishop to c7, his queen is going to get trapped. So black tried d4. I mean, no opening the center. He says, I don't want to open up the center. If center happens to open, I'm going to be dead. So let's close. Let's lock it up and make sure that you don't have any more attacks anymore, right? It should help. At least it must help someone, right? No. It cannot help. And that's for a reason. It cannot help because he's not ready, because he's not up for a support. And this move only helps white to make his own attack stronger. Try to pause the video right now and try and find it for yourself. What do you think white should do? It's got a lot of piece preparation and control right now. He's gotta have some way to make the attack work. What would you do if you have this position with white? Well, I really think that white already has what he's actually looking for. Space, piece development, a beautiful control. What more we would wish for? If I'm white here, I'd think about nothing more than the ability to get against my opponent and attack him as quickly as possible. So that's exactly what I wanted to do. He wanted to find out the right way or the most promising possibility to reach out for Black's king. I agree, it doesn't look easy, but this is exactly what he had in mind. So the next move was therefore beautiful. What was it? Well, if we would like to open up lines, we could do it possibly by exchanging the pawns and getting some more lines open up. But that wasn't possible right now, so White decided to use the old method. You know, the method of opening lines that was used by the old masters, Andersen and the great players from the past. It wasn't really that difficult. All that they said is, if I need open lines, I'm going to forcibly get them. Next move he chose was just brilliant. What was it? It was knight to d5. Did that move come prepared? Well, I guess that was all around White's main intention. Usually when we think our opponents are playing bad moves, we cannot pick up on their ideas. It's because we ourselves are left in the dark. Black was surprised by this move, which he himself would have found instantly. And actually, it's quite interesting that as soon as this move comes up, it looks so logical. It doesn't even require any calculation. Just knight d5, and that's it. You see, he's destroyed. Isn't it amazing how quickly this move really ends the game? It is amazing. It's actually incredible, I have to say. And Black can't do anything about it. He's done. It's done. After this move, the game is over very quickly. I have to tell you this. It's very quick kill. Next continuation, Black plays. Okay, can you avoid taking it? No. Because the only square where the queen can go and it won't be taken, here it will be taken. So it's going to be a4, but then the knight is going to come to b6 and Black will lose a rook. So essentially he has to take. He has two ways to take it. One is to take with the pawn and one is to take with the knight. Taking with the knight wouldn't help because being humble in this position really wouldn't make anything different so much. After the take and the recaptures, we realize that there is a pressure coming along the e6 pawn. There are more tactical features and possibilities that White is going to follow with. And so it's going to be just a matter of a few moves, really. It's queen h5, queen g4, and White would be, I think, really devastating here with every single one of his attacking pieces. It's incredible. So Black just takes with the pawn, and he's hoping, okay, your attack looked good, but how are you going to continue right there? So what is the best way to go? I think the best way to go is what we did. We decided, let's do 8x to e to the d. We have the chance to hit the knight, the bishop on e7, and every single piece is into the action. So this is just perfect, So that's very strong candidate, and after edicts to the d, Black just played knight d5. Is that a good move? Well, I guess bishop to g4 could have been also a fine shot, and you could retake so he can get to save some part of his material. I'd do that if I was Black. I mean, it looks logical. If you're so much behind in development, you'd be grateful to get the opportunity and just give away a certain portion of that material just to survive and look into the not so bright future maybe. So anyway, he can't castle because actually in case of castling he'd lose. After a3, queen b6, we have bishop takes to c6, and then the bishop on e7 is hanging, so this is bad. And we realize that actually if Black plays differently, so essentially Black loses because of that bishop on e7, and he doesn't really have the choice to easily get out. That is the biggest problem of this position, the biggest problem of that structure and the formation as well. So there are plenty of attacking possibilities, obviously, that one can choose, and of course after a3, queen b6, bishop takes, he's losing. We see d8 2 is not really working for Black, although it looks like a move that's going to work, simply because after coming over with the move of queen e4, there was an attack on the e7. And yeah, so you see, this is the biggest problem for black. He has a real big issue in being able to defend that well. So what black played was knight d8. It is a backward move, but actually what happened out there with knight to the d8 was that, you see, first of all, that knight came right back there, which was a bad thing. You see, black had to keep that possibility for something else. You know, bringing or getting that knight behind, bringing it backward is just a terrible looking move. And then when suddenly that happened, that move happened, it was just bad. You know, for a few different reasons it was bad, but I think he was just too scared. Black was too worried about what white's going to do with him with the next move, so he found that to be only one of the small amount of options to keep him safe for the moment, for a little bit. And when this move happened, of course, there are so many different continuations white can play, like knight d4 and so. But which is the best one that you choose? What would you play with white here? You can pause the video if you need and think about it yourself. What should be the most promising possibility of white so you can continue with the battle and create even further, bigger problems against black's position at this present moment? You see, I'd say that there are plenty of moves to be made, but one of them makes a lot of sense to me, and I'd like to tell you about this. You see, despite the huge amount of options that is provided to white at this moment, we have to find the most threatening, the most dangerous, the most immediate and scary move at the same time. See, it's almost sounds like a fairy tale, but it's not. It's actually the move of d6. This is the move that actually helps out there. And ultimately what you realize out there, so the threats that white is making in this position are much more valuable than anything else. It's just a threat after a threat, and it's very, very powerful. You know, this is a really solid continuation. Is there anything that black can do in order to oppose against the white upcoming threats or eventually prevent them? This is going to be very difficult, and no, I don't think he can do that much. See, this is way too scary and dangerous position from white's point of view. From black's point of view. So white is just dominating, and it's very natural to dominate like this because you see the attack is just happening. It's natural and it's strong. It's beautiful at the very same time. So every single one of those moves is helping white to expand, continue with his attack, and make it more dangerous. What black played now was knight to e6, and it was a fine move which closed the road of white's rook so it can't attack on the e7, but it didn't really stop or hold the long-term threats. The long-term threats really occurred after d6 to e7. We still notice that black yet cannot castle, and for this and other reasons, as you would say, shortly after, it's the beginning of the end. It was a really beautiful finale that what happened in the game later on. After d6 to e7, of course, queen takes e7 is a bad thing, as the king on e8 will be having some big problems to resolve. So knight takes d4. Now, it almost looks like black castles, and everything is safe, right? That's an illusion. It can be safe. Not after what happened earlier. You see, what happened earlier is that black just suffered all the time. He was having problems. Is a move like castling just going to help him survive and stay well? That's just unnatural. You know, it can't happen so quickly. It can't happen in this way, and it just doesn't. You see, the thing is that after short castles by black, all white needs to do is an exchange on e6. Black can't recapture anything but his bishop, and at this very same moment when the bishop takes in the e6, white is just going to follow with bishop to d6. We realize there is an attack against the queen, there's an attack against the rook, and it's impossible for black to hold it in here. It's great. It's really fantastic attack. And of course, after bishop takes to d6, he's losing. Black tried now the move of queen to b6, which seemed a little bit better rather than capturing directly on the e7. Nevertheless, after queen to b6, white just plays rook to c1, and with the development that is coming along just fine, and the possible tension and pressure that every single one of white's pieces is making against black's position, it would take only a little before the threats just turn into a huge type of advantage that white is so much capable to get. So basically after rook c1, black really doesn't have anything but to take on the e7. And now we see that the biggest nightmare that was out there for black is happening. What's that? It's his king that stands in the middle. And it's the fact that this king is going to become the reason white will have to hold the attack and keep it with every single one of the next moves. Is there anything that black can do about this? No. Unfortunately, he can. It's White's attack that is really driving him forward, and it's the black passive defense and bad position of his pieces that are not really giving him any ability to hold. And so it's more of a matter of time right now until the moment where his position collapses. What happened actually out there was rather straightforward, given that the strong initiative that White is keeping at this point. Well, he just continued with some more threats, like bishop c7 was the next move, and that was great. Starting out like this sounds like a real solid move. Black plays king, queen, a7, and there's knight takes to the d4. It was really a huge move. I mean, after knight takes to d4, king f8, there's knight takes to e6, bishop takes to e6, queen to d6, and you really notice something very powerful out there. This is what we call the sequence. You see, a sequence of forcing moves in a row, like checks, captures, and direct press, that don't give your opponent the chance to do anything but to defend at all times, is giving you this dangerous initiative. And the initiative is a powerful thing, because every single attack or every single threat that you create is constantly making it more difficult for the opponent to protect his position. That's what really made White's attack and you know what he did later on winning. Now, of course, we arrive at the position, and a very important thing to ask ourselves: what is that we have to do next? I mean, do we just go on with some more threats, or probably it's time for us to collect what we've received and do something better? What is the best follow-up? Actually, I have to admit that ultimately in this position, then there is this, you see, we have the queen, we have the rook, we have the bishop up into the play. Every single one of those pieces that White has is ready. The question is, of course, how do we use them? So how does White get the chance to use his pieces and really produce the dangerous threats against, or a more dangerous threats against Black's position? What's the best way? It's a tricky question indeed. There doesn't seem to be a very clear answer, and yet I think I have something in mind. You see, currently, at least presently, White's got this beautiful, really beautiful attacker. We're talking about concretely about the queen. It's impossible that Black is able to hold with a terrible bishop, the backward rook on the a8, and all of the pieces that just stand in the middle of nowhere. This has been played great by White. There's only one query. How do we get to continue it? It's been great so far. Everything went perfect, so from the start till this position. So how do we really make sure we can finish that off? How do we make sure that it can go on, proceed in a more dangerous way, and it works? That question will confuse almost anybody, because it's just very important question. It's not something we just ask. It's like, okay, the attack is out there. How do you make it work? And you see, at a certain point, despite all your preparation, the power of the pieces you've gotten, and the right activity, there comes a moment in which all you have to do is, in order to proceed with your attack, is to destroy your opponent's defense. And if you don't do that, there is no way you can penetrate or move against his position. This is the sad truth. And that's exactly what White found out right now. He found out that if he doesn't get to penetrate, if he doesn't get to break through what Black has around his own position, it will be practically impossible to get close to his king and destroy him. So what is the right way to actually get this done? What's the best way to make this work? So to break through or destroy the Black king's position, we need obviously one thing, and this is the chance to take out what's defending. What's defending really Black? What is the one thing that keeps him safe and so far defending? You know, right? I would say there is only one thing that stands in front of him, and this is nothing else or nothing different but his bishop on the e6. Look at that. Do you know what this black position would look like without that bishop? I know. There would be nothing that would help him to stand well. It's like everything is going to be ruins to black. So we realize that without this bishop, there will be nothing remaining, nothing out there to help him stay good. So that is how you can easily realize that, that's what we need. So actually, that bishop can be taken away. And after the rook takes d6, black's position really collapsed, because after the chain take and then king and fade, there's bishop to d6, and then he got checkmated. You now realize what really means to start a premature attack without having a real good base behind it, and how a strong and experienced opponent can really exploit it in a quick way. This is what actually this game is all about. It shows exactly how a strong master is going to exploit these mistakes and take a huge advantage of them. Like queen takes a c4, then we realize this is just not the right way to go. You know, it's a start that has made White's attack grow into a very dangerous initiative. And later on, when the whole development really happened and it worked up, it's ultimately this just helped White to follow through with the move of pawn up to the e4. So one of the things that can be made in such a position is that we get the ability of opening the position. When the opponent violates the rules, there is no mercy. Opening of the position is going to create more problems. Whether it will happen now or in a few moves, or how exactly it's going to work, it doesn't matter. The fact is that when the position opens, one doesn't have the possibility to oppose against the opponent's piece in a good way. So that's what really came after the move e4. And the more interesting thing is the move of knight d5, and how very shortly afterwards it was just inevitable, the threats and the different attacks that actually came through with the edicts to the d and all that, so that every single thing, every single piece of White's just came through, and it was creating some amazing, some incredible threats against Black while Black is defending. So it was a very good game. I hope that you liked it. And again, it shows, interestingly enough, what we have to keep in mind whenever we decide to attack against versus our opponent, and how to avoid making those kind of mistakes, how to think about them essentially in a little bit better way. So hope that you liked the game and the approaches.